welcome to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, Executive Director of the Community Career Center, a resource center located in Naperville for people in career transition. Joining me today is Human Resource Leader Tanya Griffin to share her career journey and offer career advice to our television audience. Tanya, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I am so glad that you said yes to joining me here at the table. Before we get started, I always like our guests to share a little bit about themselves and kind of how you started out and to where you are today. So.
Okay. Well, I have a really interesting background.
Okay.
I actually started my career as an engineer.
As an engineer?
Yes.
Okay.
I studied chemical engineering.
Okay.
And had a plan to work as an engineer after I finished college, and I did so for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
With a major company. I graduated and moved up to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I had a variety of engineering positions while I was there. But one of the things that I did as like an extracurricular activity was to help the staffing department recruit other engineers and other disciplines to the company. And this was a major manufacturer with operations around the world. And so my boss was very, very supportive of this kind of newer college grad going out to college campuses and different.
So they weren't doing that at first.
They were, but this was a big program and initiative, especially around diversity recruiting. And so I had a lot of support from my leader at the time to do this on the side. So I had the best time going out to different college campuses and recruiting, talking about the company and trying to get the students to consider our company as a place to intern and start their career like I did.
And so when you were meeting with these clients, were you focused on just engineering folks or just a wide variety of?
For the most part, yeah, especially our involvement with some of the engineering societies and organizations on campus, because the company hired a lot of engineers. And it was fun to go back to college campuses as a 20-something-year-old and stand behind.
You know everything now, then at that point, right?
And stand behind the booth versus on the other side trying to get a job.
I'm sure. You could see yourself, being that person, a few years back. So what part of that did you enjoy?
I
like the people?
I like the people. I like the, promoting the company. We had partnerships with some of these organizations, so I was like the main contact or the liaison to some of those groups, like the National Society of Black Engineers and the Society of Women Engineers. And it really was super interesting to me. So after about 8 years as an engineer, I talked to my boss and I talked to a leader in staffing and made a decision to make a career change. And it was pretty natural because it was going into the staffing department, which is where I had been playing around on an extracurricular basis.
So you worked in the HR department or staffing department for a couple of years. You said you were there for 10 years total. So
I took the job as a staffing administrator and moved to Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
So it was like
Same
a
company,
dual change, a location change and a position change. And here I was one of the people responsible for recruiting engineers and marketing and administration and a variety of disciplines for that location.
And so you immediately realized the importance of really you're making connections, right? Versus the engineering piece of it, where were you working more like individually, solo, or what were you doing?
When I was an engineer, I did a lot of project management. Large manufacturing projects where we're installing equipment to manufacture the product or upgrading equipment, and that was something that it's a very people-oriented role too, because you're interacting with the vendors and the process managers of the plant and the other engineers who work in the plant just to make sure that your projects are going well. And I did that for a few years, and I moved into a technical service engineering role, and I was working closely with marketing and our sales team on new product applications for the product lines that I represented. And that was a really people-oriented role too, because
So
I'm out in the field. I wasn't one of those research engineers who was like at the laboratory bench, head down, inventing things. It was more of, in the second part of my engineering career, more application. How are we applying these products, and how will our customers use them, and how will we make sure we get the right products to them and that their applications are going well. And plus, I hung out with the sales organization, so that was really fun.
Was good. So this was really natural for you.
It was actually really natural. I know my father, he questioned. He's like, I spent all this money on a chemical engineering degree, and what are you talking about going into human resources? My daddy. Well, the interesting thing was I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in HR or in staffing, because our careers take a lot of different paths. And the people at this company, I mean, the CEO of this $3 billion company was a chemical engineer. So you never know where your path may lead you. So I thought, okay, I'll do this, and then I'll probably end up being a plant engineer and a plant manager one day, because I'll go back to engineering. Well, what happened was I never did go back.
You never went back.
I ended up leaving or moving out of the staffing role and moving into a plant HR management role, and I actually moved again to Columbia, Missouri.
So,
Or did I go to Texas to Columbia, Missouri?
And but again, that seemed like a natural.
Because I had a lot of interest in being in manufacturing, but on the HR side. So it's kind of a blend of these two disciplines and fields that I had become a part of. So that worked out really well. I, at one point, and it was about 1,000 people at the plant, I knew the names of everybody by face, because I was one of those HR people.
HR person, then.
I know. I was one of those HR leaders that knew people, wanted to interact with people, and that created a really great dynamic for me. So,
yeah, that's good. And I think that when you, when you've transitioned from different roles and moved into that HR role, you realize the importance of really making those connections and getting to know the people, right? So when did HR has taken on you even mentioned staffing, which I remember, kind of dating ourselves a little bit.
They call it talent acquisition now.
So how did all that evolve? And HR, you're now, considered a human resource leader.
Right.
How did that all evolve?
There were a lot of different, I call them, it's not a career ladder, it's a climbing wall. So if you climb a rock wall, you might go here, and then you might go here, and you might go here, and that's some of the things that when I talk to people about their career, I tell them to stop thinking about it in terms of a ladder. So I went from staffing to an HR supervisor at a large plant, and I actually had to do a lot of staffing in that role, along with the employee relations piece. And I was not the main HR leader. I reported to that person. And then I got my own location, which happened to be back here in Chicago. Or in the Chicago area. And so I was the HR manager for that distribution center. And after a couple of years, I got a call from a headhunter about looking at an opportunity at another company that was based here in Chicago, and I grew up in Chicago.
So it just made sense.
And I never thought I would stay in Chicago because I worked for a company that moved you around a lot. But when they called, I decided, okay, I'll consider that. And so I actually left that company after almost 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
Right before I got my watch.
That's to stay for the watch.
I'm supposed to stay for the watch. And I moved to a new company in a corporate HR role. So I was supporting their IT organization.
I love hearing your story, because it really talks about, and you've probably, are able to relay this to folks that are, part of your team. Again, don't think it's a ladder. you have to look at different opportunities that really, and you just never know what's going to come your way.
Right. And you can do all the planning you want. And it's important to have a career plan, but be flexible. That's a piece of advice that I give people. And don't just think of going straight up, because you need a breadth of experience. And that's one of the things that I'm really proud about when I think about my career, is all of the different experiences that I've had. I've even stepped out of HR twice.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And what type of roles did you?
Into the business.
Okay.
So once I moved into one of our business, almost like sales spaces, I saw some synergy between kind of what I had been doing in HR and this role, which supported the dealers or the franchisees of the organization, and you were responsible for making sure that they were following the plan and the contract. So it was like, okay, HR policy versus sales contract.
Right.
And so that, it allowed me to see a different part of the company that supported a major kind of the bread and butter of the organization, and then travel around the country to all these different locations that had the franchises and interact with the owners of those franchises.
Right.
So I did that.
Yeah, wow.
And the second time I stepped out of HR was to, oh my goodness, what was the second time? It was the second time.
Yeah.
Why am I trying to blink?
But it's good when you do that, because
Right.
I would think it makes you, obviously it builds your resume.
It does,
right?
yep.
And it makes you more attractive to potential, you know, hiring managers, you know, because you've kind of, and I would imagine as a hiring manager, you look for that
Right.
too.
Because it gives you perspective. You can talk about the business. You understand the landscape that the organization operates. And even in the role that I am in right now, it's something that's giving me kind of a breadth of experience, of knowledge about the different business units. Because it's easy, sometimes you're in HR and you might even be focused on just one business unit. But if you can have an understanding of multiple business units in an organization, it makes you more valuable.
You talked about obviously enjoying the people part of it. What other activities have you enjoyed in your roles? Enjoyed or disliked?
It's a lot. So what I really, really like is coaching and advising leaders. I mean, they're the reason that people stay at a company. It's because of their bosses. They stay or go. And being able to support them as they lead and manage talent and create a team or a workforce that's engaged and happy, results oriented, and performing well is really what
That's important.
It's important. It's how do you manage the talent in the organization?
And keep that talent. We're going to talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
So up next, Tanya will share more advice for someone starting a career search. We will be back after these public service announcements.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, "Read your lease. No pets allowed." My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
Welcome back to Career Center. I am Kimberly White with Human Resource Leader Tanya Griffin, continuing our discussion on career search. And when we left, you had just mentioned you like to provide coaching advice to leaders. So what type of advice do you give to leaders? Because I think, to the point that, to your point that you made earlier about, they really, if you have a bad leader, your people are going to leave. If you have a great leader, they're going to stay. I mean, that person's really instrumental. So what's some advice that, for those listening can take away?
One of the things that I like to do with new leaders is something I call a new leader assimilation. So you're a new leader coming into an organization. You don't know anything about your team members, and they don't know anything about you. Take a couple of months, maybe 60 to 90 days to kind of get things operating. And then as an HR leader, I want us all to get together and talk. I want to see how things are going. And so this is a wonderful session where we set it up with everybody in the room, and then the leader leaves. And I talk to the colleagues or the team members, and I'm asking, like, what do you know about this person? What else would you want to know about them? What do they know about you? What do you want them to know about you? What's working well? What's not working well? What do you see as challenging? Challenging as you face the future, and then what solutions do you have? And then how are things going with communication? And this creates a great platform for me to provide coaching to the leader on how they're interacting with their team. So the first thing is, are you as a leader open? I mean, you don't have to share your whole personal life, but your team members should know something about you. They should feel a human connection to their leader. And then you should know something about them. They don't have to tell you everything, but you should know if they have children, or you should know if they have a sport or a hobby, because creating a bond, a relationship is really critical. And then asking for their ideas and insights on challenges that you're facing, and even being open to changing your way, perhaps not completely, but if you have to make some adjustments, because you lead in terms of situations, and you lead by person, not blanket leadership. So, being adaptable to a change that might make your team even more engaged is important. When I talk to leaders, and I say, well, in the process of getting to know your team members, don't just always talk about, like, what's your projects you're working on and give me a status. Start out before you even go into the work they're doing with, let's talk about your development goals. Let's talk about your career. I mean, how do you feel where you are right now, and where do you want to go, and what can I do to help you? What kind of training initiatives? So that creates this, like, really comfortable working relationship. So if there is a scenario where you have to give some crucial feedback, or
you've already established a relationship where you can do that.
Performance, I hate to use the word correction, but if you have to guide someone to improvement or guide someone to greater success, you've already developed a rapport with them where that's going to be received in a much more positive manner than somebody you hardly ever speak to or have any interaction with.
That is just such great advice, and you think everybody would just know that, but they don't. I think, especially nowadays, with people, involved in so many different things and so much going on in everyday life, to know your people, and to your point, not everything, but just a little bit. If they have kids, or they, married, do they have a sick parent that they're taking care of? In 60 days, 90 days, you have enough time to do that, and you really should.
That's what it should be focused on, and don't come in trying to change everything right away. Get to know your people. Now, the other piece of advice that I frequently have to give when I coach leaders sometimes has to do with performance-related issues. And, it's so important for a leader to be really clear about what their expectations are for their team members. You can't hold someone accountable to something if you haven't been clear in expressing expectations, and then be regular in giving feedback to them around how they're progressing towards their performance goals or expectations, versus waiting till there's a disaster and you want to come to HR because you're ready to taken employment action against a team member and you've had no conversation with them about how they're doing or what your expectations are and how they could be making improvements.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I do. A lot of career, their own leaders need coaching around their own career too. And I find a lot of joy in having career coaching conversations.
Yeah, that's good. And I think oftentimes people feel like they can't really talk about that because they don't want an employer to think that they're thinking of leaving, but you want them to grow, whether that's in your company or not. So it just makes sense to do that.
Here's a metric that I think every organization should have for leaders. We don't want to reward leaders who hoard their talent. I think we should be rewarding leaders who share their talent and move their talent.
Do not
create great talent that's movable across the organization. So you could do really well in meeting your metrics, your sales numbers, your widgets you get out the door, or customer satisfaction. But if you keep your people to yourself, I don't think you're a very successful leader.
I love that. You need to like trademark that. I like that.
No hoarders of talent.
No hoarders of talent for sure.
So anybody who's like looking to go into a leadership role, that's something that they should keep top of mind is I want people to be begging for my talent.
Yeah. I actually just sat down with my team and did just a similar, where do you want to be? What do you want to do 3, 4, 5 years from now? And let's make sure that I'm providing you opportunities to learn how to grow in that area so that, I don't want them to leave, but I think it just makes sense that we're working with people and helping people to grow. So,
and I tell team members and employees, you be the initiator of those conversations if your boss isn't. So
yeah, very good. All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit.
Okay.
So you're just, you're just graduated from college and you're trying to figure out, you already know what you're doing. You're, chemical engineer. But what some practical advice you would share with someone who's just starting a career search or maybe has been in a job for a couple years and just realized, this isn't for me?
Well, first of all, while you're in college, it is so important to try to get some work experience. Yeah. So if you're an,
so interns,
I interned with 2 major companies and I ended up joining one of those companies when I graduated from college, and I felt like I was already a member of the family. So after you start working, and the way people look for jobs today is so different than the way it used to be. But you cannot stay in your own little bubble. You have to be out and about. Networking. And you probably hear it all the time. People come on your show. That is the way that I've gotten the last 3 jobs that I got. I didn't reach out and call someone. They called me because they were people that knew that I was looking or knew that I had a skill set that the company.
Or they just saw you on LinkedIn too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So you can spend a lot of time, sending resumes out. And you'll get frustrated because you're one of 1,000 resumes. So how do you network? I mean, of course, LinkedIn is a great tool. Lots of features there, and but finding places where people are, like professional organizations,
keeping those memberships up,
but attending their events, and having a good elevator speech or brand statement. It's all in how you approach and introduce yourself, and there's lots of books and information on how to brand yourself. And the other thing that people should do is, if you're an active in the job searches, just get a blank piece of paper or however you do it and start writing down everybody you know. Professionally and perhaps socially or professionally, personally, who might be able to connect you to someone who would eventually, could eventually result in, a prospect for a potential job. And it's easy not to do that because it takes time, it takes preparation and planning before that's a part of it, but that is one thing that I would highly recommend people do. And then reach out to all those people and let them know that you are what you're looking for and ask for their kind of their network, if they have people that they can introduce you to or can share your information with, and start there.
Start there. It's critical and crucial to, you have to be comfortable in that space, but you really, even if you are an introvert, you need to figure out how to be an extrovert during that, during that time. So, so again, going back, when you think about competencies and skills and that you need, what are some things you would share with your newly graduated self, if you will, that you want to make sure that you get along the way?
Yeah, so I look at a lot of companies they're like leadership competency models, and companies are very unique. They tailor those to what they need as an organization, but there's a lot of common language there, like being good at teamwork, and you're not going to be working by yourself. So how you interact with others and how you focus on being a leader versus being an individual contributor, and understanding that there's great value in both of them is important. Customer service, we all service someone, whether they're internal or external, so having customer service and service excellence at the top of mind is critical. What's also really important in this fast-paced environment in which we exist is being results-driven. You've got to be somebody who gets things done and resourceful in the way you do it in a creative way. And then, as organizations become more global, your perspective around different cultures and this global landscape that we exist in is going to be something that'll make you successful in your search and successful once you get that job. And then as people get higher in organizations, and you don't have to be too high, but understanding that we're looking for people who can create or think about something in the future, a vision, and start to figure out how to get there. Even the way that you speak about what you do can't be about how we do things today. It has to be about what can we do in the future and what should we be. It's like you have foresight, so you see things in terms of possibilities, not just in actuality today.
I loved what you just said, because you really are talking about people have to be really well-rounded, right? And be open. And we didn't, get to touch much on, or at all, on diversity and inclusion. But you talked about the global piece, and your company needs to be able to see, or your hiring manager or your boss needs to be able to see someone that's has a perspective that is more global. So diversity of thought and thinking and all of that. So
companies cannot be successful if they don't bring that piece in. And they don't hire for that. And people who are looking for jobs are looking for companies that value diversity and inclusion.
So clean up that social media account, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much for joining me on this month's edition of Career Center. And to our television audience, if you're in job transition or looking for job search advice, visit the Community Career Center at 1815 West Dill Road, Suite 900 in Naperville, or search us on the web at communitycareercenter.org. Thanks so much for watching. Okay,